And we're welcoming you back. Our next guest is an executive coach and a conscious leadership facilitator at the Stanford Graduate Business School. As the founder of a six-figure coaching business, she guides leaders to transcend cultural and societal constraints, harnessing their personal power in both work and life. And here now to highlight how she is successfully empowering women of color, seeking career and personal development, is the author of Unearthed, The Lies We Carry, the Truths We Bury, Ms. Chanchal Garg. We thank you so much for joining us, Chanchal.
Thanks for having me, Daren.
Listen, I want to ask you this because we know that culture is changing and society is changing, right? So many things that are going on. And to really be able to stay on top and to stay afloat, you've got to have a strong message. And so what's the message that you're giving to women of color, particularly in a time such as this?
Yeah, so I think right now, what I'm experiencing, at least, is that a lot of times in our leadership, these inherited cultural narratives or narratives that we've taken on because of the organizations that we belong to are sort of running the show. And when that happens, we're not leading from our true place. We're not leading from alignment. We're leading from fear. And so my main message is to really start to question, what are these inherited narratives that I have? What are the narratives I have around leadership, around how I'm raising my family, around how I'm modeling for the next generation? And how do we start to question those so that we can get more true to who we are?
Yeah. So you've used your own personal experience as a motivator and really sharing with others how to really be able to overcome. Talking a little bit about, some of the things that you've had to encounter in life and using what you've incurred, and you can feel free to share as you wish. How has that served as a motivating message to those that you're now dealing with?
Yeah, well, my book, Unearthed, The Lies We Carry and the Truths They Bury, is about my journey through spiritual and sexual abuse. And while these stories are pretty extreme and not necessarily super common, the underlying themes are very similar and are sort of universal. I would say that, again, these inherited narratives, these things that the ways in which we think we have to show up in silence and sacrifice, sort of betraying ourselves in order to belong, in order to feel relevant. As I coach women of color, especially, my own experience sort of comes through with that. And my message, again, is just to start to question these things, start to doubt your own doubt, recognize that you have wisdom beyond just what other people have told you, beyond just these narratives of how you feel like you need to show up in order to survive, in order to belong, in order to feel, quote unquote, relevant.
Yeah. And as you talk about showing up, the first thing that I think about sometimes is that the way to show up, right, or showing up is sometimes prevented because of one word, boundaries, right? That sometimes boundaries prevent us from showing up, and we haven't put them in place. Talk to me about the word boundaries and what it means for showing up and the work that you do.
Absolutely. So the one thing that I tell folks is the number one boundary to hold is the boundary with yourself. We can set 1,000,001 boundaries, but at the end of the day, you can't outsource them. It's our own responsibility to uphold them. And so being able to do that can be challenging at times, especially, again, when we've sort of been indoctrinated with these narratives of being silent and sacrificing ourselves or betraying ourselves in the name of loyalty. And so being able to hold those boundaries, and also, I just want to name the rage underneath that oftentimes for women of color is real. It's justified. And I think when that rage shows up, when that anger shows up, allowing it to inform our boundaries so that we're not backtracking, we're not over-explaining, we're not doing it in those ways, allows us to hold those boundaries more effectively. And when we can hold those boundaries more effectively, we're actually preserving our own energy so that we can show up in effective ways, in ways that can move the needle in the work that we're doing in the world.
Yeah. I want to take a moment and talk about these 5 types of connections, 5 types of communication that you actually offer to help guide people and navigate people when you're talking about this thing called connection and deepening that connection. For somebody that's out there, give us the 5 and, walk us through it.
Yeah, so the 5 levels of communication is actually based on work from Richard Francesco from the Stanford Graduate School of Business. And it goes from sort of sharing observations and facts to moving towards more feelings and values and even, sort of sharing identity. And what we've seen is that people trust you when you're more human, not when you're more polished. And so a lot of times we find that leaders sort of stop at the earlier stages of these levels and they don't want to go into feelings. There's always sort of that adage of leave your feelings at the door when you come to work. But what we found is that the more leaders can actually be vulnerable appropriately, not oversharing, the more effective they are. I remember that I was working with a leader once who she was running this organization that was really struggling, and she felt this overwhelming need to be constantly positive. And so in our work together, we started looking at like what would authenticity as a leader for her look like. And so the next all hands meeting she had, she went in and she shared, I'm really concerned about the direction of our company. I'm really worried about where we are right now. And I also believe that we have the best team that we've ever had. And I know we're going to get through this together. And so what happened from there is her influence just skyrocketed. And people got on board and they were ready to do the work that was needed to turn the company around. And they were fully invested themselves. It's not that they were just being told to do it. They were doing this from their own volition. And so I think that's what the difference is. People just want to work for someone else who is human, who's relatable.
Right. For yourself, I mean, as an author now, if you're just joining us now, she's the author of the book Unearthed, The Lies We Carry and the Truths We Bury. What do you want people to walk away with when they experience reading your book?
Yes, thank you. What I've found so far is that people, they read the book and they're kind of like, wow, you've been through a lot. And yes, I have. But that's not the main message. Again, the message here is to say, how do we question these beliefs that we just sort of accept as who we are? How do we question the way that we're showing up in the world so that we can get closer to our potential, to our purpose in terms of what we're trying to do in the world? So in my own story that I share in the book, it's really been about questioning, like, is this belief really mine? Do I really believe that I need to be silent? Do I really believe that there's something here beyond my understanding and I just need to be quiet and tolerate? And as I started to question those things, as I started to question even traditions, even rituals, even, some of the things that my parents told me, honestly, as I started to do that, I was able to move past. And it's not a matter of not honoring where I came from or not honoring my heritage or my culture. It's a matter of evolving that. And the more I do that, I not only get to change my own leadership, I not only get to feel more aligned in how I'm showing up, but I get to show that to the next generation so they can continue that process for their own children and feel more aligned in who they are and how they're leading in their own work.
Yeah. Chanchal, I think about the word question, right? Because you said you hit on that a lot. We got to ask the questions, but then there's something between question and moving to action. What does it take and bridge that gap of moving from question to action?
Well, I think the question is first, because we've got to build the awareness. And then from there, it's about how am I going to show up in a way that's closer to me? For me, at first, when I realized what was going on in my book, again, my book is about spiritual and sexual abuse. When I first realized what was happening, it took me a couple weeks to just sort of sit with that. And then at that point, it was like, okay, I need to extricate myself from this community. I need to tell the people in my life who matter. So starting to take those steps, honestly, baby steps, a little bit at a time, is helpful. When we try to sort of jump forward before we're ready, that can also cause a little bit of panic. It can also cause a little bit of, it can re-traumatize in ways. And so what I say is that, there's this saying that you have to find your voice. And I don't know that that's necessarily true. I think your voice is always there. Sometimes it's being quiet because it's not necessarily safe for it to come out yet, but it will come out when it's safe. Just start practicing in small spaces.
For people who want to get more information about how to find their voice through your book, right? And I think you said it's always there, but they need a coach in order to bring it out. So if somebody needs that coach, how do they go about reaching you? What do they do?
Yeah, so my website has lots of information on it. It's chanchalgarg.com or theunearthedway.com. So they're more than welcome to go to my website. My book, Unearthed, The Lies We Carry and the Truths They Bury. My information is in there as well. I encourage folks to check out the book.
And before we go, you talk a little bit about culture, and I think so much, that many people are dealing with is how to break through the culture. And as a woman of color, talking about culture, I got about a minute left, but just give me unpack that for me. How do women of color really, break through this culture that we're dealing with right now that is really not so affirming when it comes to women of color?
Absolutely. I don't know that it's necessarily about having a goal of breaking through it, because I don't know that I don't know that that's realistic at this point. It's really about showing up as you are. And so I think oftentimes when we look at sort of this larger picture of like, how do I break through this culture, it can be really overwhelming. And so there are going to be rooms that are able to tolerate you, and there's going to be and tolerate your whole self, and there's going to be rooms that are not able to. And so I think it's really about discerning, where can I show up and where can I not, and recognizing that just because I can't show up in my wholeness in this room doesn't make me wrong.
Yeah.
And so I think it's staying with that and just one step at a time, and keep on keeping on. It's tough right now.
It is tough right now. I think that's a word that we've been talking about for quite some time. It's tough right now. All right, Chanchal, we got to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Daren.